everyone. Welcome to Fab Skin Hot Bodies. This is your host, Dr. Jeannette Graf, and my co-host, Joey Comasta.
Hello.
And Joey, you also have another podcast.
Indeed, I do. You can catch my podcast. It's called It's Happening with Snooki and Joey every Thursday on iTunes or anywhere else you can find podcasts. We're good time gals. We like to drink and talk junk about celebrities and all that fun stuff. So if you're looking for a good time, come on over to It's Happening podcast.
But this is a much better time. So
yeah, this is much better, for sure.
And especially because I'm so excited about our guest today. Her name is Cary Carbonaro, and she is an award-winning, internationally known personal finance expert. She's managing director of United Capital, which is the fourth largest independent registered investment advisor in the U.S. She's the author, I love this, of the best-selling book, The Money Queen's Guide, listed in the top 10 books to make you rich. It is a bestseller on Amazon. I am going to tell you, I bought 5 of these and gave them as gifts, including to my daughter. So get them for your nieces, get them for your daughters. This is a great book. And she's an ambassador for the CFP, Certified Financial Planning Board, one of 48 in the country. Wow. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. So happy to be here with you guys.
So let me ask you something. What made you write this book?
So I don't know if you know, and you guys can just jump in here anytime, but
Sure.
I think women in general are financially illiterate, and it's a major problem.
I am too, so it's fine.
Okay, good. Well, and you know what? I don't want anybody to be financially literate, especially women. So the other reason that I wrote this book is I've watched in the last 25 years of my career, all these women make all these mistakes with money. And I even see my best friends make mistakes all the time about money. And, women, we don't talk about, we'll talk about sex, drugs, rock and roll, whatever, but we're not going to talk about our 401ks or what's in our bank account or what's in our portfolio. It's just not something, it's like a taboo subject that we do not talk about. And you know what? We need to be talking about it because that's how we learn. And I wanted it to make it a relatable story. So first I start with a juicy story about my life and what happened to me. And I have a crazy story about having something like the worst thing that you could ever imagine happen to you when I went through my divorce. And if it happened to me, it can happen to anybody. So that's my cautionary tale, and it's really juicy, and everybody really likes it, especially the beginning part. You'll like the juicy beginning part.
Yeah.
And then I talk
drama,
about
honey.
then I talk about what you do in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s so that you can be financially free. And honestly, who doesn't want to be financially free?
Amen,
Everybody.
sister.
Everybody.
Okay, so before we get into the nuts and bolts of what I want to ask you, what is a certified financial planner? Because there are a lot of people out there who claim to be financial planners, who are stockbrokers, who are accountants, and so how do you know who they are? How do you find one? How do you know it's the right one?
Great question. So there's actually multiple questions in there. So I'm going to take them one by one. Okay, so the first thing is a certified financial planner. To find one, you have to, well, first of all, to become one, you have to go through, you have to take a board exam. So it's almost like the difference between being a board certified doctor or a board certified attorney versus non-board certified. So I don't know why anybody would want to be with somebody who's not board certified.
Right.
So it's the next level up, right?
They might not even know it.
Right, exactly. So then that's step one. The second thing is you have to be a fiduciary, and you have to go through this whole process, and you have to take a board exam, and you have to have education, and you have to have experience, and you have to have ethics. So it's all this to be able to become this. Now, out of those CFPs in the United States, there's 75,000 right now. However, there's over 2 million people calling themselves financial planners. So it's a very small subsegment that's certified financial planners. So in order to find one, it's very simple. We have a website called cfpboard.org, and that lists all the CFPs who are certified, and it will show how long they've been certified and give specifics about them and what their specialties are and things like that. So
I think the most important thing is how do you find one? And you've just said so. It's cfpboard.org.
Yep.
And that's fantastic because that's great information. I didn't know about that. You use the word fiduciary.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. It's so funny. I use it like everybody knows what I'm talking about.
I don't even know how to spell that.
think about it. A fiduciary it's funny because if you Google the fiduciary rule, you'll see hundreds and hundreds of pages about what is going on about this. Believe it or not, it's actually like a law that they're trying to bring into existence that just keeps getting not happening. But really what it means, the bottom line, I'll take out all the jargon, and what it means is, guess what? That person is acting in your best interest and putting you first. Now, you would think that anybody you worked with that you gave your money to would be a fiduciary, but you would be wrong.
That's how people get, embezzlement, and they like steal all their money. And,
well,
run.
if you think about who's the biggest Ponzi scheme ever.
I know.
You know it.
Vanessa Williams. It wasn't her who went bankrupt. That's that girl that went.
Bernie Madoff.
No.
Yes.
Come on.
Oh, I was talking about Tamara.
That's what I was looking
Toni
for.
Braxton. She got her riches were stolen by her financial advisor.
Yes.
She got robbed.
There's so many. I can't even tell you. If I told you how many people this has been through, you would not even believe it. But yet, it's so funny because people keep falling and falling and falling for it. It's usually greed. It's usually lack of knowledge. It's usually trusting the wrong people. But, in this day and age, nobody should be doing that.
Okay, I have a question for you because, this is really facing a lot of women today.
Yes.
Whether you're single or married, and to me, even if you're married, you should still handle your money like you're single.
Yes.
And be independently able to support yourself.
And hide a bank account from your husband.
Yes. I actually am an advocate for that.
Yeah.
But let's say you're 40 years old or 50 years old. Whether it's a situation of divorce where your husband got a better lawyer and you're only getting a certain amount of money.
Right.
That is hard to exist on, or you haven't saved.
Right.
How do you start? What do you
Okay,
do?
so, and it's funny because in my book I say, this is what you do in your 20s, this is what you do in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever. Honestly, if you have not started, you can just go back in the beginning to the 20s because you have to start somewhere. So I would say to all the audience that's listening now, I don't care what excuses you're going to give me. Today, you're going to start saving for yourself and for your retirement. I don't care if you put 1% away. I promise you, the $5 that you're paying for your Starbucks, over time, you will not miss it. I promise you, and you will thank me because when you're older and wiser, and you'll be like, oh my God, she was so right, and I'm so glad I listened to her because now I have a nest egg. And it's such little tiny things. I always say it's like little squirrels. It's like a little squirrel
I love squirrels.
putting little nuts away. And little tiny nuts turn into a huge amount over time. And that's what it's all about. Time is the best thing that you have. So, which is why if you start in your 20s, you're going to amass so much more and it's so much easier. But guess what? There's no reason to never start. Like, I don't care if you're 40, I don't care if you're 50, you need to start.
So should it be 1% every day, once a week?
Okay, so I would say
Each paycheck?
Yes, I would say the minimum, this is the minimum because honestly, let's say you make $30,000 a year. If you're saving, $300 or that's 1%, you are never going to miss that. And
$300 for the year?
But you could do it for the year. It's a good place. I don't care.
Oh,
Yeah, I know.
I could do that.
I'm doing baby steps. But then every year you up it by 1%.
Okay.
So the next year you're doing 2%. Then the next year you're doing 3%. And then the next thing you know, you're at 15% over 15 years. And now you're starting to have some real money.
Right.
So the stats are actually really scary because 25% of the population has 1 year saved for retirement. 50% of the population has 0 saved for retirement. And only the top 5% of the economy have anything enough to potentially retire, which means 95% of the world or
Right.
of the United States has nothing or is not ready for retirement.
I think I have like 2 years.
That's good at your age.
But that's without drinking or like going out. Like I can actually eat like ramen noodles in my in a box by myself for the 2 years.
But I have so many patients who got hit really hard with the last stock market correction.
Yes.
They were living off their dividends.
08, 09, yeah.
And this is
If you don't remember.
I don't even know what that means. 08, 09?
The financial crisis.
Oh.
Of
yeah.
08, of 2008 and 2009.
Is that worse than the Beanie Baby crash of 96?
It was.
Okay.
Well, the stock market took a dive, so people who were living off dividends on stocks really it really affected them.
Well, what happened, just to go back, because a lot of people don't remember, and it's actually a very scary time, but the market literally fell 40% from 2008 and 2009. So if you had $1 million, you now have $600,000.
Oh.
And and it was super scary. And the banks were on the brink of collapsing. We were having banks collapsing all over the place. That's when WAMU went under. Merrill Lynch got taken over by Bank of America, and Lehman went under, and Bear Stearns went under.
Where I hang out, it's usually supermodels collapsing from malnutrition, but continue.
They you know what? They may have collapsed over this too.
Yeah, they probably didn't have any more money left
exactly.
to buy their drugs
So
with.
what is the kind of advice you would give to somebody now where they can put their money? Let's say they are vested in the stock market.
Okay, so it's such a good question. So I get this asked a lot because it's funny. The market has now since 2009 was the low. The market has almost gone straight up since then. We had a couple of pauses. We had a couple of little dips, but then they came right back up. Okay, so normally the way it goes with the market is it goes down and up over time. However, over any 10-year time frame in all of history, it has never been a losing amount from a 10-year period. So if you have 10 years or greater, you will not lose money in the stock market, provided you're diversified and not with, like, let's say a single stock, which could go to zero, like a WAMU or a Lehman, which has happened. So that's why you do diversification, which everybody has heard that term, don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? Mm-hmm. So you should be not afraid of the market. And it's funny because I find that a lot of women would rather hold on to cash than put it in the market. And I always say to them, you're actually losing money because inflation is going 3 to 4% a year. You're getting like a penny on interest, and then you're paying taxes on the penny that you earn. So it's like a lose-lose proposition, even though it feels like it's safe and it feels like it's comfortable because you want to hold on to your nest egg. Women have to, because they live so much longer, have to put it in the market. I mean, there's just no choice. But again, diversify, go with somebody you trust. You might just want to go with indexes, which get the return of the market. That's another whole story because it's index is active versus passive, but that's a little bit more complicated, so we're not going to talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is like Greek to me. So this is not the only time you're going to have, be a guest with me. So this is a really interesting thing because right now is, this is the longest bull market. A bull market is a market that keeps going up.
Right.
That we have had.
Right.
Since like World War II, right?
It's super long. It's interesting because there's people who go back and forth because we did have like a 10% correction 1 month. But then the next month we were back up. So it almost doesn't count. So which is why we say it's the longest running bull. However, it is inevitable that it will correct. Nothing ever always goes straight up. It just doesn't. It's not possible. So it will correct. It's healthy for it to correct. And guess what? If it does correct, it's okay because it will just give the market time to reevaluate, reassess. And then if you're not living off of it right now or you don't need it right this moment in time, you have to make sure that then guess what? In 10 years, you'll be back up again and you won't lose any money. So, but the other issue is, let's say you're living off of it. If you're living off of it, honestly, like you said, your friends who were used to collect the dividends and be fine, that was a lot of people. Now those people need professional help to be able to, if you're living off your portfolio and taking off of it, you need to work with somebody because you need to make sure that you're doing tax, taking it off tax efficient, making sure you're not, just getting 1% in the bank if you're lucky. You need to have a nice diversified mix of dividends and stocks and bonds, and that's where, a professional would come in.
Well, that's fantastic information. So I just want to stress, look up cfpboard.org if you want to find a certified financial planner, and that's really important that they be certified.
And a fiduciary.
Yeah, make sure you get that fiduciary.
Yes.
Girl.
And a fiduciary. So let's back up to, and by the way, whatever advice you're giving, applies to men as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny. I always focus on women because I think I want to make it female friendly. So I try to dress it up and put an Hermes bag on the front of my cover and make it purple, because I want them to be drawn to it. And it's funny because a couple times women have said to me, I saw the bag, I saw the money, I saw the name, and I had to have it.
Well, Joey's very drawn to this.
Yeah, I love the book. I've been reading it. I'm looking for a section for the prenuptial agreement. Is that in here anywhere?
I do have a prenup agreement.
What chapter? Which one is that?
I don't know where it is, but it's in there. It's in there.
Yeah, because that's something that women have to be smart about as well. Because especially if more women have careers before they get married now,
unless they have more money than men.
Well, that's most of Hollywood. I mean, these huge actresses that have been there for years, and they marry some like Gardner, and then they get left for
Exactly.
I would get a prenuptial agreement. I don't trust no one, girl, not even my own father, because he lies to me all the time about things.
It's so needed. I mean, and it's funny because you think about a prenup. What happens is when you're in the throes of a relationship and it's hot and heavy and you are in love and you are vulnerable, and you know what? Nobody ever thinks, why would this person take advantage of me? Why would this person hurt me? Why would this person do anything, that's not in my best interest? Guess what?
Right. Even if it's just for the flat screen and the the IKEA couch that you bought, girl.
Yeah, exactly.
You only getting half, bitch.
Exactly. Exactly.
So right now
or worse.
Yeah.
We're at a time when millennials are moving back in the home.
Yes.
Okay, they're coming back home. It's hard to get a job. I think life now compared to when I was growing up, it's just so complicated. It's so
more
complex.
Expensive.
So let's go through the decades.
Sure. So I say it's so funny because the 20s is my favorite because you have so many years. So because you have time on your side, if you make the right moves in your 20s, you're going to be set.
But no one's doing that anymore. That's the problem because people nowadays, like my parents got married and like 21 and 22, they owned their own home, first home, the home that we grew up in at 24 years old, 25 years old. Nowadays, 24-year-olds are still like living in their parents' bedrooms, and not even the basement, still in their old bedroom. And people are living at home until they're 30 now. People aren't getting married until 35, 40 years old sometimes now, and they're not buying homes or getting property. So like the expectation of society has completely changed, and that's why not only just women are having trouble, it's everyone in this generation. People in their 30s are in no way ready to buy a home at this point, and not anyone I know anyway. I'm 38, and our friends are still we're still renting, we're still like no one's buying homes, and it's too expensive. It's unattainable because we weren't planned for it.
Well, and the other issue with that is you guys have you saw the financial crisis collapse home values,
right?
And I've seen my clients' kids see their parents lose houses, and you know what? I've had some of them say, I never want to own a home. So that's another whole shift in what happened because of 07, 08, 09. But that's another story. But all right, yes, I 100% agree with you. Let's go back to what you can, though, do in your 20s.
Let's fix that problem.
Yes. So
we're positive here.
Right. What you can do in your 20s is you can start saving. Let's start with 1% a year. Then let's go to 2%. Guess what? If you start at 21, by the time you're 30, you saved 1% extra a year every single year. And you know what? Every bonus you get, spend half, save half. Every single time you get, I don't know, checks from mom or whatever, I don't know, gifts or whatever, save half, spend half. Or what I also do is the third, and I say a third to pay off debt, a third to spend now, a third to put away for the future. I think that's a good rule so that you're not living on ramen noodles and not enjoying life when you're in your 20s, because that's not good either.
So 20-year-olds, listen, you don't have to have Starbucks every day.
Yeah, well, unless you could afford it for some reason and your budget allows it. But, this is a super important thing, which I think I say throughout the whole book, but it's really important to learn in your 20s is to always spend less than you make. If you always spend less than you make, you will always have money, and you will always have choices, and you will always have freedom. And guess what? It just gets better over time because then you have more money and more freedom. But anyway, so in your 20s, that's one thing, is to start the savings. Number 2 is to make sure that you are on a budget and that you have this extra money left over. Okay? Then the third thing is make sure if you're working at a company that you take advantage of the employee benefits, because most people, if they're working for a big company, they get a stack about 2 inches high with their employee benefits, and they're like, I don't know what any of this is. I have nobody to ask, other than their parents or a coworker. They have no idea. There is literally gold in those employee benefits. I mean, money that you could put away for the rest of your life in those employee benefits. And all you have to do is read or work with somebody who can tell you what's in there, but don't throw them away. They're amazing. And then, of course, pay off that student loan debt, which I know that's another whole story.
Calling Miss Sally Mae to the table, girl.
That's another whole story, because then I could get into a whole thing about why I wouldn't want you to get into the debt in the first place. And also, super important, those credit cards. Do not use those credit cards unless you pay them off in full at the end of the month.
Right.
Super important.
Yeah.
Super important. Otherwise, you're giving the credit card company 18%.
And you'll never get out of the debt. And it's just it's a terrible cycle of debt that you do not want to be in, and the sooner you break that cycle, if you break it at 22, if you break it at 30, you are going to have a weight off your shoulders. And then all that money now can go to you.
Right. You're wasting your money. You really
throwing it away.
You really don't need to go out to that restaurant or go to the bar or
Well,
whatever,
you can,
buy that thing.
as long as you pay it off.
Right, yeah, but people take credit cards, they say they get a $5,000 limit, and then they spend the $5,000 within 2 months.
Right.
And then they're stuck with a $5,000 bill that in turn becomes a $10,000 bill with all the interest rates and late fees and all that other shit.
Exactly. Well, and what I say to people is, and it's the same with women and men, but I think women might be worse, and I hope I'm not stereotyping, but
that's fine.
But credit cards are not free money.
No.
Not only do you have to pay the piper, you have to pay the piper more.
Right.
So it's just not what people think it is.
So when you're in your 20s, I guess that applies to your 30s as well. And when you're in your 30s, you're starting to try to find your own place.
Yes. And so I have a whole big formula on that, which is super important. Okay, so there's a formula. It's called the 28-36 rule. And what you do is you take your gross income, divide it by 12, times 0.28. That is the maximum amount you should be spending for rent or spending for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance on a house. And if you followed that rule, nobody would have lost their home during the last bubble burst of real estate, because nobody did follow that rule. And that rule went out the window, and you could get all those crazy exotic mortgages, and it didn't matter if you had income, it didn't matter if you had assets, it didn't matter if you had a good credit. Everybody got mortgages back then, and that's what brought down the economy in 07, 08, 09.
So we call that rule?
It's how much house you can afford.
Right.
And it's super conservative, and it's actually the CFP rule of what the banks used to use for lending and probably are using now, but didn't use from probably 2002 to 2007. It went out the window, but now it's back, and it's super important. And then the other debt rule, the 36, is if you were at 28% with your housing, then you have only 8% left for other debt, which is everything. Your credit cards, which I hope you don't have, your student loans, which I hope you don't have, your car payment, which it's okay, you need a car, and most people don't pay cash, whatever else you have that you're borrowing. So only 8% difference. And if you stick to that rule, you're doing everything right.
Okay, so this is great information. So let's say you're in your 40s now, and today's world, perhaps, maybe or maybe not, you may have children now.
Right. So 40s is interesting. It's such a different time, because, what I find, and I'm still in my 40s, knock on wood, I have a little bit of time left here. 40s is a very much of a reinvention time, because you've got a lot of women who are deciding to either go back to school, to go out on their own as independent, like leave and be their own boss. Some of them are getting divorced. Some of them are getting remarried. Some of them are having empty nesters with their kids if they had them young. So it's a time of a lot of reinvention, because it's a good decade for that. So there's a lot of things to examine. What do you want to do for the rest of your life? Because it's a nice pivot point in your life to figure out, okay, what's next? And hey, maybe I should get serious about retirement too, or what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, and that's hard because, I have a lot of patients who are in their 40s and they have kids, and, they're divorced. And, some of them elected to be stay-at-home moms.
That's what I would have done.
And
Had the opportunity.
But, then they've gotten divorced and they find themselves not living in the lifestyle that they were accustomed to.
Right.
And all of a sudden, what am I going to do?
Right. Right. And that's a little.
Get a lawyer, honey.
Oh, yeah. Well, exactly. Well, and, it's funny.
Too late.
And you know what? It's done. Exactly. It's done. You know what? This is why I preach all the time, even if you're a stay-home mom, that you should have something that you do on the side. You should not lose your skills, especially of, what you went to school for. You should have your own retirement account, because guess what? If you don't work and your spouse works, you can still do what's called a spousal IRA every year, where he puts in, or she, if you're the other person, puts in $6,000 a year for you, and that's your retirement money that nobody can take away.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yep. I always tell people to do that. I think it's interesting because I chose to not have children. And I chose to not have children for many reasons. And I know, it's I guess it's accepted nowadays, but it wasn't, 20 years ago.
It's super accepted now. In fact, my friend owns a successful PR company, and, she was in Forbes about not having children, making that decision.
It was totally my choice. And it's funny because you said you wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I'm like, you couldn't have paid me to be a stay-at-home mom, because I would be so afraid that I would lose my earning potential, my earning ability, and that I would be not actually getting paid for that work. And that to me was, the anxiety would have been too high that I would have been dependent on somebody else.
That's when you have to embezzle from your husband, like my mom did.
Yes, exactly.
You'd have to hide things in the car and act like we bought them 6 months earlier. Like, oh, we've had this. What are you talking about? And hide things in the garage, then bring them in slowly so he doesn't know that you're spending all his money.
Exactly. And also have your private accounts on the side.
Yes.
Right? Yes, and have your private accounts.
And another thing is, my father and I have the same name, so my mother used to bring me to the store with her when I had my driver's license, so she can case checkbook and write a check. But when they needed an ID, she used to like, give me your wallet. I go, why? She's like, just give me your driver's license. I was like, okay. So me and my mom used to go to the store, and I can kick out whatever I wanted, but I had to pretend that I was my father with the account with my driver's license and his name on the check. So.
Well, Joey does that to me too.
Yeah, I do that. Dr. Jeannette Graf.
So you have to be really careful
around me. You better watch your purse, girl.
You got to stop doing that.
I know. But yeah, so that's just a little fun thing my mom and I used to do for shits and giggles.
I love it.
So what's the biggest do-it-yourself mistake women make?
Okay, I would say that most women do not plan their financial lives. The number is incredibly small. And it's interesting because women are really great planners. We can plan a wedding, we can plan a party, we can plan a vacation, we can plan anything that's fun, but we don't even think about planning our financial future. And that is what scares me. So that's what gets me out of bed in the morning and wants me to, scream from the top of the Empire State Building, hey, you need to take care of this for yourself. Because you know what? Not that I don't trust men. I mean, I have a wonderful husband now, finally, after all these years. I screwed up many times, and so now I finally have a good one. But even still, I'm still 100% responsible for myself. And I think that, I feel like the 20-something-year-olds are coming up and saying, I'm going to be responsible for myself. Do you agree with me?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Well, that's the advice that I gave my daughter. I said it's always important to be able to support yourself, to be financially independent.
So, and it's interesting because what I've seen in my, 25-year career with, working with women and couples and whatever, is that as a woman, you are like 99% going to become a widow, meaning you're going to outlive your husband. So only 1% of women outlive the opposite. The men outlive the women. So there's a very good chance you're going to be a widow. Even if you have a great marriage and your husband takes care of you, there's obviously the divorce rate is over 50%. And so there's that chance, even if you think you have a perfect marriage, Well,
what comes to mind for me as a dermatologist, and I do a lot of skincare, cosmetics, aesthetics, and, injectables. And women have taken care of themselves and regularly come in for their maintenance. And all of a sudden they're divorced. Then their husband might go on disability. So what they were originally getting has now plummeted. And now they're treading water.
Right.
So it's not even a question of being able to get the maintenance that you once had.
Right. It's scary. Well, and that, again, back to my financial freedom, if you had planned, guess what?
You could get your Botox regularly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's priorities here. And it's funny because I tell people I don't even like Care Credit, which I know I'm sure you use all the time. But I'm like, you know what? You should be able to pay for it in total without having to take a loan.
For those who don't know, Care Credit is a
Yeah, I was like,
program.
what's that?
It's a program that you can find in a lot of
Is
businesses.
it for the needy that can't afford Botox?
No, it's service. It's in
Oh.
the service industry, so not just medical, not just cosmetic, but other industries where it's 3 months. You got to pay it in 3 months. I mean, the person who gave you the service will get paid,
Right.
but you're going to have to pay it off in 3 months with interest.
Right. Exactly.
And the idea, I guess, is to avoid having to pay interest on anything if you can.
Exactly. And also, I think if you have to take out a loan for it, you probably can't afford it. Wait to save till you have the money and then do it. Or put it on the credit card and then pay it off in full at the end of the month, which is my other thing that I always say.
Like an Amex card.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I read this book, as I said, The Money Queen. I think it's fantastic. It's a compelling read. Your personal life, which has propelled you into a lot of things.
Yes, it has.
Your personal story. Well, you know, our personal lives really influence who we become.
Yes.
And really influence our thinking and our way of life. You know, we have to look at these things, no matter how traumatic they are, as a gift.
Absolutely.
This book, what made you write it?
I just felt compelled. I had two books in my head. I had my book of my story of my divorce, my cautionary tale. And then the second thing was I had, oh my God, all these things I've seen over the last 25 years of my life with mistakes that women have made, that I've made, that all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, I have two books. I have what I've seen with my clients, and then I have what happened to me. And then I sort of combine them together. So, and I said, I have to get this book out because I have to share this with the world. I feel like my story is powerful enough. If this happened to me, who knows everything about money, then it can happen to anybody. And that's the scary part. And that's what I want to really reach out to women and, you know, share my vulnerability and my mistakes.
I've gotten this book and I've given it as a gift. So it makes a fantastic gift.
Thank you.
Especially if you have, you know, a daughter, especially if you know someone who has younger children.
Right.
It's a how-to book, a step-by-step.
Yes, yes. And that's what it was originally for. I mean, it's funny because it's actually used right now in this program called Girls Rock the Street, Wall Street, and it's about financial literacy for girls in high school. And so they go out and they use my book as part of the curriculum to, you know, teach the girls who are 15, 16, 17, and 18, which is a really good years if you can get them, because that's before they get student loans and before they pick a college. And, you know, usually people now read it, the average age of my book that they read it is like in their mid-20s. But guess what? You're already out of college and you may already have your first credit card debt. You may already have your first credit card. You may have, you know, expensive student loans from a college that you went to because you chose it because your best friend was going, or you know, you thought, you know, I even have my stepson who said to me, I gave him the same deal that my dad gave me. My dad gave me, if you go to a state school, I'll pay for it 100%. If you go to a private school, you have to take out loans. And I was 18 years old, and this is before Google, so I couldn't Google what was a loan. But so then I had to figure it out, and I had to like research, and of course ask my father, and then do research on my own. And I'm like, ugh, why would anybody want a loan? It's the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. Borrowing money and then having it over your head and then having to pay it back? No. So I was like, I'm going to public school. So we gave the same option to my stepson, who did not have the same visceral reaction that I did. And he was like, why wouldn't I go to private school? And I said, okay, then you're taking out student loans. And he was like, no problem. And, you know, and then of course, when he graduated, he was like, are you guys paying these off for me for graduation? So anyway, he actually then said, oh, now I see what you meant when you told me that at 18.
I want to ask you about the pay gap, because
Yes.
there is a pay gap between what women make versus what men make.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, it's about About 80%. We make about 80% of what men make. And it's getting better a little bit over time. You know, at one point it was much worse than that. So, you know, it takes us to like April, beginning of April to like catch up. And every year it goes like a day or two closer to January to catch up. So it's definitely narrowing. And, you know, depending on the field you're in, some fields are better than others for the pay wage gap. Now, it's interesting because for my industry, I figured there's no pay gap. There's not a chance there's a pay gap. I've never felt a pay gap in my life. I don't think that there's anything that I'm, you know, missing. I think I get paid the same as men. And then I did this thing called motto.com, and you can actually figure out what your pay gap is depending on your industry. And I did it. And it said I would make 90% more if I was a man.
Oh, wow.
That's not good.
And you work for yourself.
Yes.
So it's kind of weird.
I was shocked. I mean, I literally fell off my chair. But I do believe that it's in my profession, because there's only 20% of women and 80% of men. It is a little bit harder for women in my profession, because we're the
Yeah, you're pioneering the way for you know, financial advisors and women in finance. So
Exactly.
this is your arena, girl. You should set the bar. Be like, no, actually, we're going to make this much, and
Yep. Well, that's what I'm
what's gonna be.
trying. I'm trying to break the glass ceiling. I feel like I'm very close.
I
feel like I'm like right there. Like it's like touching my head.
Well, everyone else can be too, because you girls have to get the Money Queen's Guide for women who both want to build wealth and banish fear from Cary Carbonaro.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's a gorgeous little paperback with a purple purse on it. So look for that at your local bookstore or on Amazon.
You know, I was just thinking when you were saying that, it's women who do the budgeting at home.
Yes.
And I look at Congress and I'm saying, what are these guys doing in there?
Oh my gosh.
We have to get them out and get CFP
Yes.
women in there.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. That would be, and guess what? It would be balanced. It would be balanced in 1 year.
Yeah, because they've never balanced a budget.
No, we were balanced, I think, in the 90s at one point for like 2 minutes, and then that was it.
Cary, would you please tell our listeners how they can reach you, how they can find you, your website?
Sure,
please?
I'm super.
Home address, social security number.
Yeah, I'm super easy to find.
Social Security.
Mother's
Well,
maiden name.
You know why I'm so super easy? Because I'm the only Cary Carbonaro on the planet. So all you have to do is Google me, but I'll give you other ways to reach me too. But I am very easy to find. You can find me on Facebook at Cary Carbonaro or at Money Queen Guide. You can find me on Twitter at Cary Carbonaro or at Money Queen Guide. You can find me on LinkedIn at Cary Carbonaro, Money Queen CFP, or you can find me on Instagram. Instagram at Cary Carbonaro.
Lovely. Well, thank you for joining us, Cary. I've learned so much, and I'm going to try to start saving $1 every day now.
Yay! That's
I'm going to try,
wonderful.
but we'll give it a whirl.
That is fantastic, and this has been a fantastic segment, and I so appreciate you coming in to be our guest today.
Thank
and
you.
It's been
Thank you for having me.
And I've been dying to meet you because I have read your book, and I'm giving it away, and I'm saying, I've got to meet this woman. So it's great having you.
Thank you so much.
And live out loud.